California was burning and emergency management officials in Sacramento were listing the latest statistics about the fires, the firefighters, the acres burned, the fatalities, the missing people, the number of tanker planes and helicopters deployed, and so on. To one side, in a suit and tie, stood the governor, Jerry Brown. When he took the microphone, he offered the long view of this extraordinary year of natural disasters in the United States. It's just part of the facts of a highly developed society, is that you have a lot of people and a lot of assets in the face of floods and hurricane and fires, Brown said at the Wednesday briefing. And this is what happens. That might have sounded detached and cerebral while in the middle of a crisis, but it's what everyone in the emergency management business knows to be true. As a people, we are consistently stepping into the path of destruction. Natural disasters have a heavily engineered element. Recent months have delivered a steady pounding of misery, as flooding drowned Houston, hurricanes chewed through Florida, the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and wildfires killed dozens of people in California. If it feels like these things are getting worse, experts say that's because, in some cases, they are. Their island homes wiped away in the hurricanes, Caribbean residents wonder should they go back? There are more people and property vulnerable to natural forces. And climate change doesn't help. Scientists know that global warming does not create a specific hurricane or a wildfire, but climate change, which has been driven significantly by the burning of fossil fuels, primes the pump for extreme weather. A warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture and produce heavier deluges. On a hotter planet, droughts can be, and have been, more severe. Coastal flooding gets worse as seas rise. The wildfire season has gotten longer in recent years, and the wildfires are bigger, said Shauna Garza, Director of Fire and Aviation Management for the U.S. Forest Service. We're seeing intense periods of longer, hotter summers, she said. We saw that this summer in Montana where it didn't rain for 60 days. Carrie Emanuel, a professor of meteorology at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, said the kind of torrential rains that flooded Houston are far more likely than they were a generation ago. The underlying probability of a Hurricane Harvey-like rainfall in Texas was maybe 1% annual probability in 1990 and is 6% probability today because of climate change, Emanuel said. The recent U.S. events have been catastrophic but hardly unimaginable. Engineers have long warned of the flood risks in Houston, which flooded in 2015 and 2016. Florida, meanwhile, has historically been a magnet for hurricanes, getting hit by more than any other state between 1851 and 2015, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Florida's population has quadrupled in half a century, to more than 20 million. At one point in September, the entire Florida peninsula was under a hurricane warning from Irma, which traveled up the state as if trying to drive up Interstate 75 and affected almost every one of Florida's major population centers. Florida's booming coastal population might create its own herd mentality of collective safety rather than vulnerability. And psychologists say it's human nature to avoid thinking about natural disasters. Most of us evaluate risk based on our gut feelings, said Paul Slovic, a psychology professor at the University of Oregon. When we rank potential threats, natural hazards tend to be relatively low considering the amount of damage that they pose and their frequency. Disasters such as wildfires, hurricanes and floods have been around forever, so we're familiar with them, he said. People tend to be worried about new, unfamiliar threats, he said, such as terrorism and the kind of mass shooting that took scores of lives in Las Vegas. Mother Nature isn't malicious, Slovic said. We don't feel she is out to get us, whereas a terrorist is out to harm us, just for the pure hatred, desire to harm. Some hazards have only recently been grasped by the scientific community. Researchers in the Pacific Northwest have discovered that every few hundred years, an offshore fault known as the Cascadia subduction zone ruptures in a manner that creates not only a powerful earthquake but also a devastating tsunami. The odds of an 8-magnitude earthquake or stronger somewhere in the Cascadia region are between 30 and 40% during the next half-century, said Chris Goldfinger, a paleoseismologist at Oregon State University. This year's rash of hurricanes or flooding might seem unprecedented, Goldfinger said, but such things have happened thousands of times before, back when there weren't any humans around to record them. Wherever we are in time, we are always between things most of the time, until your number comes up, he said. Sigh.